I'm going to play around with some MIDI tracks for a moment so you can see how this actually works. What I want to do to start out with is I have a MIDI track. If you haven't created one, you go up to Track, click on New, select Software Instrument. That's basically a virtual MIDI instrument. External MIDI is used for external devices or keyboards that you want to run into Logic. For now, a MIDI track will be considered the software instrument. So you press Create, and you'll see that I'll eventually get another track that will show up. What I need to do now is make sure that I have a synthesizer selected that I want to use. So in order to do that, I go down the top here and you can see where it says I/O. It's the ins and outs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a synthesizer. I'm going to try this Sculpture synth in a stereo format, and you'll see that it should pop up. And right here is the synthesizer. And knowing what we know before, it's a matter of having different oscillators and things like that. If you don't want to freak out working through the synth because it looks too complicated for you, you can go up and you can actually find some interesting sounds that are already programmed for you. So I'm going to use an acoustic harp for a moment. Turn off my keyboard sound. So now I have just the harp sound. So I'll get that out of the way for a moment, and I'm going to actually record Mary Had a Little Lamb. It basically starts on E, the one white note above the two black, and I will press record. The track is armed. I press record. An epic composition for your listening pleasure. So I'm going to go back here. Now you can see I started on the second measure. I can drag this around if I want. If I want to start on the first, it's fine. It doesn't really matter where you start. If I want to hear this thing and have it repeat and repeat, there's a loop function up top here that I can actually have it bounce back every time I'm working on it. It doesn't really matter if it's on or not. If I want to get this to be really clean, I double click on it and it opens up the piano roll. This thing is pretty awesome. And if I look really carefully, I can see that for the most part I've hit all of these right on the grid. Not exactly perfect, but pretty darn close. You can see this one right here is a little bit early. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You want your music to sound somewhat human, if you will. But if I had the desire to kind of clean things up a little bit, I could go up here and I could find the quarter note. I could highlight all of them by clicking on Command A. I select all of them, and then I have, this is what's called a quantize function, and if I click it, you might have just noticed how everything just shifted. Now it's exactly on the beat, each one of those notes, all the way through. I'm going to hide my media window for a moment. So now you have my piano roll, which corresponds to the notes that are over here. They all line up. If I played a wrong note, I could easily just drag the note to somewhere else. If I wanted to change how loud each individual note was, I could change what's called the velocity. And what I would do here is go to the velocity tool. What that allows me to do is click on the note I played. Now that note's going to have kind of an accent on it. It's going to pop out a little bit more than the rest. Here it has a little bit more inflection to it, making my Mary Had a Little Lamb that much more epic. So now I have basically a MIDI file that is playing a sound source inside my Sculpture synthesizer. It's pretty basic. The other part of the assignment that we were talking about says to add a second track and try something else beneath it. For a moment, what I might do is grab another synthesizer. Try this FM synth. Pull this over a little bit so I can see it. Arm the track so I can hear it. So I got this kind of weird sound to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record something underneath it. And I played in the key of C before, so I'm just going to do a very simple pattern underneath this. started to repeat over on me because I had the loop function on. Might be a good idea to push that over. Now that really was not that exciting, but I will make sure that my edits are good on it. Move this up for a moment because I'm going to use it in a bit. I'm going to select all down below. I have them all. I'm going to quantize it to the quarter note. Everything lines up now. Really awesome. I'm going to pan that part over a little bit, and then I'm going to click on the harp, and I'm going to pan the other one the other way. That's just so it kind of spreads it out. I'm also going to see if I can find a better sound. So I'm going to go up here, and you can see I can change my sounds anytime I want. I'm going to go to a fretless wave bass and see if it sounds any different. Really, once again, incredibly exciting. Now, if I want to have a little bit more fun with this, obviously I can change the velocity things. I can cut and paste. I could slice this up. If I wanted to loop this whole song so that you could hear it more than once, what I could do is grab on here, and you can see there's a little loop function. It automatically copies it and keeps repeating it. And that's really handy if you want to put in a drum groove. What? You want to put in a drum groove? Let's do it. So I'm going to add a track. And sometimes I don't necessarily have to do this, but it's software instrument track. I'm going to go create. I'm going to wait for it. Turn on my media window is going to open, and I have a library here, and I'm going to go to loops. And I'll try that again. Sorry. And inside my loops, it's time for a new Mac. So there we go. I want a drum kit. And this is important. When these kits load up, you're going to see that they're different colors. These are all blue. I need to find the green ones. The green ones are actually MIDI files. And when I drag this over and load it up, it sends that MIDI track into this track here. Now, you're going to discover something pretty quick. I'm going to solo this. It's not going to sound like a drummer. Oh, it did. I got lucky. Because what happened is it actually changed my I/O down below, which means my in and outs. So I have a drum kit that it actually found for me and loaded it up. I could also use the Ultra Beat, and if you ever get a chance to learn that, I would, because it's absolutely epic. And drag this, so now I have a drum groove set to Mary Had a Little Lamb. It all fits because I used a metronome and I quantized everything when I first recorded this. Here it goes. I don't need to record. Let me try that again. Play it. Now the question is, why do I only hear the drum groove? If you look up here, I have it soloed. So I'm going to go back, press play, and I'll hear the whole thing. Sounds like one of those bad Casio pianos. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat for a moment. I'm going to make this sound a little bit more epic by putting on the output a plugin. And I told you once before about these settings. And you can actually do mastering settings. You can actually get a little bit more sound out of it. So I'm going to call this a Final Rock Master Wide. And it's adding all these plugins automatically for me. Let's see what it does to the sound. Probably can't hear it on this video. But it's a lot fatter than it used to be. If I wanted to, I could also do a send to a bus. Let's turn up the amount I'm going to send to that bus. On the insert, I put my reverb on it. That's stereo reverb. My reverb opens up. I have a preset that I've stored on here, which you might do at some point. It makes it a little bit faster. And that preset basically goes to one of my favorite EQ settings. So I'm going to click on that. And now I should have a little more reverb in this sound. Oh my God. Now what we got is reverb on the drum kit. If I wanted to put it on everything, I got my mixer here, right? I can actually, when I hold down the shift button, I can highlight two tracks, and this is a handy trick. If I want to set up a bunch of sends at the same time, you can see how they all set. pull them up, they both pull up. Now my entire mix, as epic as it is going to go to that bus. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. If I want to have no life whatsoever, I could start playing with all sorts of distortion and dynamics and kinds of filters as you're going through here. These really interesting wahs. You really should play with some of these because they're kind of cool. Again, I like the flangers. Throw a flanger on there for a moment. This is a very basic one. To a default setting to, how about the orange flanger? Now this is on my aux, so everything's going to get that flanger. Pick up the speed. Never thought Mary Had a Little Lamb could sound so good, could you? So basically we have this. What's another kind of cool thing, if you haven't seen it yet, is the score view. And when you hit the score view, you can actually see the notes that are being played. You can actually edit in this window. It's a little slow and a little clunky, but it's not too bad. It can get you going. If I want to change the tempo of the whole thing, what's amazing about MIDI is I can crank this up now to 190. I don't have to worry about trying to get all my audio files to work at that tempo. Now the whole thing is faster, didn't change pitch. It's in good shape. The thing is so epic, I want to have every track fade out. So I open up the automation window, click on the line, and I pull these down, and I basically am now creating volume automation. If you haven't tried this yet, you really need to have that in your bag. Basically what will happen is that this is all going to fade out. You can hear how it faded out. When you're not using automation, be sure to turn it off because it will drive you nuts. And one little silly thing, I like the auto zoom function. Allows me to see the track. I use this more when I'm dealing with audio than with MIDI. Once you're finished with a project like this, what you can do is you can bounce the whole thing. And what I like to do is make sure that everything is highlighted first because it'll automatically set my bounce correctly to the number of bars that I need. And you can see down here I'm going to bounce it to an MP3. I'm going to send it to my desktop, and it says it's going to start on measure 1, it's going to end on measure 9 as an MP3. I have my normalize on, I bounce it. If you want it to be much more accurate, you bounce in real time so it plays it through and it'll actually get a better accurate data, whereas if you just do it offline, then it will sometimes drop out sounds and you'll wonder why it doesn't sound right. So now it converts it to MP3, and I have an epic MP3 file that I can listen to every day on my iPod because this is an amazing song. So anyhow, hope that helped a little bit.